Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our Fiqh Hour special, which is a Hajj special. We are on week 3 now of the Hajj special, alhamdulillah. Week 1, if you've not had a chance to watch it yet, we focus on more the kind of philosophical and the spiritual aspects of Hajj in preparation. Last week, we did a broad overview of the ritual acts and the rites of Hajj. And today, inshallah, we will start 2-series lecture of going a little bit more deep dive now into the actual days of Hajj. So a little bit more technical, going through each specific day, what is required to do on each day. And as I said, we're going to split that into 2 weeks. One is going to be this week, inshallah, which is week 3. And then one is going to be next week, inshallah, which is on week 4. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Share screen. Let's go for window, and let's go for that. Press share. Should now be able to see the so I'm going to assume you can see this presentation. If not, we're in trouble. I don't know if someone's actually now can maybe just mention on the message me, WhatsApp me, whatever, to let me know that you're actually getting this. But like I said, I'm going to assume that you are, unless I'm told otherwise. So the essentials of Hajj and Umrah, how to perform Hajj, a step-by-step guide. As you know, when I do lecture more kind of on an official sort of capacity, in the sense of in a proper lecture, we have sort of a PowerPoint where people can follow, students can follow. And then I always give a broad overview of the lecture. So as is normal, a short introduction. And then we're going to cover the key components of Umrah and Hajj, which is Ihram, which is the requirement before a person can actually start the ritual acts. Tawaf, circumambulation. Tawafa yatufu, to go around the Kaaba, which is performed both for Umrah and for Hajj. Sa'i, which means to hasten, to speed, to go quickly. And that is the sa'i, which is performed between Safa and Marwa. Induction, which sounds interesting, so we'll keep that a little bit under the cloak and dagger, and let's wait for it to get to that point before we speak about it. Arafat or Arafah, in which there is the standing, the Waqf of Arafat, and then the other areas we're obviously going to cover Mina as well, but Muzdalifah, Mina. And then when we return back to the Masjid al-Haram, the Tawaf Ziyarah, which is the key Tawaf, the Tawaf of Hajj. The Jamarat, which becomes a regular occurrence on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, where we do one Jamarat, al-Jamaratul Aqaba, on the first day, and then we do all 3 on day 2 and day 3. And then finally, as we leave Makkah to go to Medina, then we do at-Tawaf al-Wida. Obviously, there's always an opportunity for other matters and compensation. But as I said, we're not going to do all of this today, inshallah, because I'm conscious of time. We do have some questions already appeared on the Markaz al-Ifta wal Qāḍī. Please do, whilst we are discussing this, please do put other questions up if they need answering. The aim is that we cover approximately half of this today. Maybe we might reach Arafah or Muzdalifah, and then we leave the rest for next week, because this is going to be split over 2 weeks. So, introduction. As I said, these 2 lectures are going to be quite technical. So this is, very fiqh orientated, not like the lecture that I delivered in week 1, and not like the lecture that was delivered last week, even though last week was a broad overview. This is going to be very technical. It's going to go right into the kind of specifics of Hajj. So Hajj is fard, compulsory. As we know, it is one of the 5 pillars or 5 foundations, Bunya al-Islam al-Khams. Every person who is free, now this is somewhat irrelevant because we find that slavery is not a concept that exists. Of course, there is still the human trafficking and exploitation of humans, which is sort of like slavery. But the slavery that is considered a slavery in back in the day was slavery which was legitimate slavery. I appreciate we do not consider that as a reasonable means of dealing with humans, but it was a concept which existed, and it was a legitimate means, meaning that people could be owned. But people could not be taken into slavery, i.e. a free person could not become a slave. This person would have been born in slavery, most likely. So therefore, this person would have been always a slave. This person did not know what freedom was at all. So this is why free, but I'm using it because these are the technical terms which are used in the books of fiqh. Muslim, we've had the lengthy conversation about whether other acts are fard upon non-Muslims. Mukallaf, yani mukallaf meaning that the law applies to this person. Right, the law applies to this person, that there's sanity, there's adulthood. These are the key definitions, and we've described adulthood in detail last week, and we've described sanity as well last week. Medically fit, now this is a bit of a loose term. What do we mean by medically fit? Unfortunately, many people from the South Asian community, as soon as they hit their 30s or 40s, aren't considered as medically fit because of either diabetes or heart problems or being obese or whatever. So we're going to define medically fit as somebody who is not got a dilapidating illness, something which is actually deteriorating them continuously. So otherwise, hardly anybody, unfortunately, would be considered as medically fit, because many of us now don't take our fitness seriously, and as a consequence, we get affected. Non-blind, for obvious reasons. Again, having said that, nowadays, obviously, there is great support for people who struggle. Remember, the books were written at a time when people would travel to these places from afar on camel, horseback, by walking. So therefore, it would prove difficult. Now, obviously, society does take care of its vulnerable or those who are unable to do the things which the so-called able-bodied people can do. So therefore, even though it may not be compulsory, there's an expectation of somebody to be able to go, even if the person is visually impaired. They must have expenses to travel and the provisions to travel, passport, visa, usual things. And it's got to be more than their base needs, and also their familial costs until they return, if they have a responsibility upon them, like they are a husband or a father. Secondly, there must be safe passage. This is all to do with traveling. There has to be a safe passage, so there's no war going on, or there's no, nowadays obviously war is the only reason why they will be. Well, we had a volcano eruption, so there might be times where there's a volcano eruption and planes can't go past that particular route, but they could be diverted, so that's not an issue anymore. And for a woman, her husband or a mahram, if between her and Makkah there is a distance of 3 days journey, which for most of us is going to be the case. Hajj is fard once in a lifetime, meaning that one doesn't have to perform more than that. But that Hajj means that it must be fard upon them before they can perform it. So if a child performs Hajj, then their Hajj is not complete. They must be adult for that to become compulsory upon them, as we've already defined there under C. Without delay, there's a difference of views with regards this. Without delay, the Hanafi general position is that it does permit delay. However, this is something that I believe it's something that should be encouraged. Unfortunately, we do delay it for the wrong reasons, and then we are we're in a difficult predicament when we're going in our 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. The fard is not fulfilled if one enters ihram in the state of being, if as a child but then reaches puberty, or as a slave but then becomes free, as I mentioned earlier. If the ihram is renewed for the fard, it will be valid for the child, but not for the slave. Meaning that if a person goes as a 12-year-old or something like that, as a 12-year-old boy, wears the ihram, and then before he starts the ritual acts of Hajj, he reaches maturity, and therefore he then makes a new niyyah for his Hajj, and therefore his Hajj will be accepted. Furthermore, as we carry on with the introduction, the fard acts of Hajj are what? Because it's important to know what the fard acts of Hajj are. Because if one does not perform the fard acts of Hajj, then Hajj is not done. Like in Salah, for example, if a person does not do Qira, Salah is not done. If they don't do Ruku, Salah is not done. If they don't make Sajda, Salah is not done. So there's certain things that a person must do which are fard, which cannot be repaired or cannot have a penalty paid for them, or cannot be made up later, that they have to be performed. And what are these fard acts of Hajj? Well, the first is going into Ihram. And as we explained last week, this is not, what we don't mean by this is wearing the two sheets for the men. What we mean by this is obviously the niyyah. And like we explained last week, that the sharait have to be met before you make the niyyah. Like the sharait of salah have to be met before you make the niyyah for salah. You cannot make the niyyah of ihram and you've not met the sharait yet, because as soon as you make the niyyah, you're going to be making your ihram invalid. Secondly, the waqf, the waiting in Arafah. That's the second thing. And I mentioned that to you as well whilst we were going through the structure of the lecture. And then finally, the tawaf ziyarah. Okay, at tawaf ziyarah. These three are absolutely essential. You don't do one of these three, your Hajj is not done. Okay, Hajj is not done. That's why at tawaf ziyarah is a problem sometimes for women when their menstrual cycle starts, and obviously they've not performed at tawaf ziyarah, and then their ticket is due to travel, and now they're stuck, because without performing tawaf ziyarah, their Hajj is not complete. They can't perform tawaf ziyarah because they're in a state of haid, which won't permit them to come into the masjid or perform this ritual act, so they're stuck. And if they leave in this state, then they're still stuck because they haven't come out of ihram, which means that they can't have intimacy with their husband if they're married. So it is a very difficult scenario. And I gave the discussion of what possibilities exist for that woman who's in these circumstances last week. So watch that video. The wajib acts of Hajj. Now, according to the Ahnaf, there's very little difference between wajib and fard, apart from the evidence that they've used in order to establish that position. So we differentiate it only because of the evidence that this is based on. But in terms of the practicality element of it on the person, it's the same as fard. Okay, so like again, I'll give examples of salah, like witr. The 3 rakats after Isha is wajib. However, we do not differentiate them from the 4 fard of Isha, meaning that if you make qada of your Isha, you would have to do the 4 fard of your Isha, and you would have to do the 3 witr as well. Okay, so we only differentiate them because the proof upon which Isha is established is clearer and stronger than the proof upon which the witr is established. However, in terms of practicalities, in terms of the conduct of the worshipper, he does not or she does not differentiate them. So what are the wajib acts? Waiting in Muzdalifah. Again, that was one of the destinations that we mentioned. But you notice that it's just the waiting. There's no specific act that one has to perform in Arafah. There's no specific act that one has to perform in Muzdalifah. It is getting there. That is the act. Sa'i between Safa and Marwa, we discussed that, and we'll go into that more detail as well. Rami of the Jima, yani pelting of the sort of brick walls that exist now. Tawaf Sadr for a visitor. Other than the mentioned fard and wajib, the rest are sunnah and etiquettes. So anything else we mention is, we always work on the rule of exception when it comes to sunan and mustahab, because there's lots of sunan and there's lots of mustahabat. So rather than mention all the sunan and mention all the mustahabat, it's easier through deduction to exclude the fard exclude the wajib, and then whatever remains is sunnah. Obviously, you've got to know that is sunnah, that is not a bid'ah. A bid'ah is where somebody performs something using their own intellect, where there was actually a prescribed practice that the Prophet ﷺ adhered to. So this usually comes about due to lack of ilm. So when a person doesn't know that the Prophet ﷺ did such and such at this particular time, so they think, oh, we need to do something at this particular time. What shall we do? Oh, why don't we do this? That sounds like a good idea. Okay. And then that's a bid'ah, because you've invented something, because you think we should be doing something at this particular time, but you did not know that the Prophet ﷺ did such and such at this time. It's a lack of knowledge. So when does Hajj become fard upon a person? The months of Hajj are Shawwal, which is obviously as soon as the Eid al-Fitr starts on the 1st of Shawwal. Okay, so after Ramadan is Shawwal. So we had that month last. We're now in Dhul Qa'dah at the moment. We are on the 23rd of Dhul Qa'dah. So next week, next Tuesday, I believe, we'll be looking for the moon of Dhul Hijjah, and then the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah will start, and that will mean that the 10th of Dhul Hijjah will be Eid al-Adha, which will be the week after. So Dhul Qa'dah started, and I've just mentioned the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, when Dhul Hijjah is due to start. It is makruh to enter into ihram for Hajj before the months of Hajj. So one shouldn't go into the ihram of Hajj in Ramadan or in Sha'ban or anything before. Now, someone might say, subhanAllah, I'm struggling to go into ihram literally before my flight. Why would anybody be going into ihram 2 months before? Well, as I said at the outset, many people traveled by foot to perform Hajj. Many people traveled by animal to perform Hajj. Therefore, they would leave their cities, towns, whatever, months before the actual days of Hajj. Why? Because they wanted to get there early rather than get there late, and they didn't know what they would come across during their travels. They could fall ill, the animal could die, and they would actually work along the way. In fact, my mother, Allah bless her, she would tell us a story that her father or grandfather, I'm mistaken now, actually went by kind of on the road by foot to perform Hajj when they were young men. Many moons ago, it took them several months there and back. So it was a common thing, several generations ago. Now, obviously, it's unheard of. Now we struggle. So therefore, this person is going to be in ihram for 2-3 months. So that shows, that's why it's a once in a lifetime thing. That's why there's so much ajr for it, because you're in this sanctified state for so long. So that's why this is somewhat irrelevant, but it's academic. But khair, we do mention it so that ilm stays there, it doesn't disappear. Umrah is sunnah, according to Ahnaf. According to other madhahib, they will say at least to perform once, it will be a requirement, which is at tawaf ziyarah. The only reason why it's is there are several tawafs, and the one which is fard, clearly in the sequence of things with regards to Umrah and Sa'i, we've already mentioned. So you see a similarity there, okay? Tawaf and Sa'i, and obviously, even though it doesn't mention it here, going into ihram. Okay, so there's no awqaf. So that's the difference between Umrah and Hajj. In Umrah, you're not going to these separate destinations, Mina, Arafah. You're not going to these places. You're not going to the Jamarat. You're going to stay in Al-Masjid al-Haram. Okay, everything is going to be performed in the vicinity of the masjid. That's it. Everything is done. That's your Umrah done. Whereas with Hajj, you're going to start there, and then you're going to venture out, all the way out. And we're going to show you some diagrams later, and then you're going to come all the way back. Sometimes people can't get confused between Umrah and Hajj. What's the difference? Well, the difference is the different destinations that you go to. It is permissible to perform Umrah every year. There's no restriction. Hajj is performed once in a lifetime. Obviously, people can perform it more than once in a lifetime, but now you're going to see with the Hajj administration that's going to become less and less and less because of the fact that the Muslim population is so large. They want to restrict numbers for health and safety reasons and other matters. So therefore, you're going to see less and less people going repeatedly. And it's going to become more of a once in a lifetime thing. The prices are quite high as well. So therefore, it's going to go back to those days where it was once in a lifetime. I think that period of 30 years or so, 40 years in the middle, where people could go literally once every couple of years, that period is now gone. It's now reaching to a point where it's going to become, again, a once in a lifetime opportunity. Umrah is makruh on the day of Arafah. And if I ask you the question, if you ask the question why, well, because on the day of Arafah, you should be performing Hajj. And on the day of Arafah, guess where you will be? Arafah, correct. And the Masjid al-Haram is not in Arafah, it is in Mecca. And the 4 days which come after, because again, those 4 days you should be spending in Mina during the day, and also pelting the Jamarat, which are next to Mina, and then staying there. And then when the 12th day finishes, before the night and the start of the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, you then make your way down back to the Haram, Yani Masjid rather, back to Mecca. If, however, you're deciding to pelt that extra day, then you will stay again that night in Mina. So Ihram, okay? So Ihram is, as we've said, going into this highly sanctified state, rare state. The only comparison you can make is going into i'tikaf at the last 10 days of Ramadan. But even going into i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan, there are not as many restrictions as they are upon you in the days of Ihram. Because in the 10 days of i'tikaf, yes, you are physically restricted to not leave the masjid, but you can wear what you want. You can shower, but obviously you should only shower if there's a need, a necessity, not because you just want to freshen up. There's got to be a necessity because you're leaving the masjid. There's no showers in the masjid. So it's the issue is leaving the masjid. But you can eat quite freely. There's no restrictions to your eating. There's no restrictions to the use of ither or stitched clothing or whatever. You can kill something if needs be, I guess. Hopefully not the chap who was in the tent next to you snoring. But in Ihram, you can't do anything at all. So it's a high state. I guess there's arguments that could be made because it's slightly different, but it is you're doing specific tasks which you don't do anywhere else on the planet. So it is a very unusual state to be in. Okay, it's as close to kind of monasticism and the equivalent nunning, nunnery, that you can get in Islam, because Islam does not adopt celibacy. Islam does not adopt leaving the dunya. Islam does not adopt this secluding yourself in a cave or in a building away from society. Islam is a very practical religion for all people, not for the specialized few, so that everybody can engage in a normal day and at the same time be close to Allah. But then it has these little periods, like at the end of Ramadan, like in Ihram, where you can dissociate from the dunya, but only for a few days, and then obviously you're expected to kind of get back into normality again, because this was very much a land moving people. So you'll find that the miqat is like an upside down kite, meaning the kind of square part of it is at the bottom. That's a rough. You'll see a picture of it soon, inshallah. So the miqat for the people of Medina, those who are coming from the north, is Dhul Hulayfa. For those who come from Iraq, from the east, is Dhat Irq. Those who are coming from Sham, which again is sort of the west, is Al-Juhfa. Those who are coming from Najd is Qaran, which is slightly southeast. And those who are coming from Yemen, my favorite word, is Yalamlam. Afaq is an area outside of the miqat. So it's just a term that you might hear this. It is prohibited to delay the ihram beyond the miqat, meaning that when you reach the miqat, you should be in a state of ihram. Okay. For those coming from outside of the ihram, intending to enter into Mecca. For us, obviously, we're landing primarily in Jeddah, so we would have already traversed past the miqat. Or I know some people land in Medina now that Medina has an airport, but again, you would have obviously traversed again past the miqat in most cases. So if that happens, that your plane journey is going to cross into the miqat, then you are supposed to be in ihram before that. Okay, that's what it is. And not just that the men have changed their clothes, but you have made the niyyah as well. So it is prohibited to wear ihram in advance. So that's why these categories exist. So what would happen at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and even after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Khulafa, and after the Khulafa, and the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een, what they would do is they would travel in there, and these became outposts. Okay, these became like places where you could rest, stop, load up with more food and water, give rest to your camels, your horses, go into, there'll be masajids there, go into ihram, make your niyyah, and then now be in a state of pilgrimage. So this whole area was, you'd see people around the time of Hajj as pilgrims. The hill, not the hill as in a raised part of the earth, but the hill with a ha, is the area between the miqat and the haram. Okay. It is permissible for those who live within the hill, meaning if you already live there, to enter Makkah without being in the state of ihram. Why? Because the hill is in the area between the miqat and the haram, meaning it's already within. Okay, it's already within that. So they're not going to go back out of this area in order to go into ihram. They're already physically, geographically in the area. So because they're already in the area, then those who live there, they can enter into Makkah without being in the state of ihram. Okay. The miqat of those who live within the hill is the hill. Okay. And this is why what you find many people who want to perform numerous umrah, what they do is they then go into that area hill and they go into ihram again and then come back to perform an extra umrah. The haram is the extended area surrounding the Kaaba, and the haram is quite sizable now. For those of you been recently, I haven't been for over 10 years now. How time flies. It has expanded tremendously. The miqat for those in Makkah is for Hajj is the haram. So if you're already in Makkah, you've already performed your umrah. For most people, what they will do is they might go to Aziziyah or some other area, or they might go straight to a hotel in Makkah. Then they will go perform umrah first, because they do tamattu, and I'm not going to tell you what tamattu is. I've already explained that in great detail over the last 2 weeks. So they will perform umrah, and once they perform umrah, they will come out of ihram and they'll stay in the hotel in Makkah. So now they're already in Makkah. They've come out of ihram. They came when they passed the miqat. They were in ihram for umrah. They performed their umrah. They've now relinquished their ihram, and now they're waiting for 8th of Dhul Hijjah. So when the 8th of Dhul Hijjah comes, they now need to go back into ihram. So where would they go into ihram? They will go into ihram in the haram itself. So what they would normally do is change their clothing in the hotel room, walk into the masjid and perform the 2 rakats nafil, and now they're in ihram. Then they'd wait for their coaches to go set off to the various areas which we're going to go through. I've already mentioned, if a person wants to repeat an umrah, then what they would do is they would go into ihram at Hill. Okay, that's already been explained. And here it is, the diagram. I shared this with you last week, if I'm not mistaken, my so-called upside down kite, where you've got your sort of pointy bit here at the bottom, and then you've got this sharper bit there. And as you can see, Medina is there. Dhul Hulayfa is at the top peak. I don't know if you can see my arrow that I'm moving around, but if you can't, I'm talking about Dhul Hulayfa at the top. You've then got Al-Jahfa coming down on the left-hand side, and then you've got Jeddah, which we've already explained. And then obviously at the bottom end, you've got Yalamlam. Yemen is south. So people, they will travel north to Makkah. Al-Juhfa, Syria is west. So they would come along the coast to Makkah. Dhul Hulayfa, you can see just outside is Medina. So those people would come down from Medina. Now, obviously, I mentioned earlier that if you were going to land at Medina, you may be expected to go into Ihram. The reason why I said that is some of the flight patterns may go through the miqat, past the miqat. And if the flight pattern is going to go through the miqat, then you should have been in Ihram. If, however, it's coming from an angle which is not going to go at all into it, then obviously you don't need to until you reach to Dhul Hulayfa. Zat Irq, because obviously Iraq is towards the east. Al-Qarn, Qarn al-Manazil, because the Najd is slightly southeast, very slightly. I would say Iraq is kind of more northeast, and the Qarn, Najd is more east-ish. Okay, so that's your diagram. That will help you understand that. Here's another version of the same diagram, but obviously this is not being made with sharp lines, but rather loose lines. And the reason for this is twofold. One is because you can see in the top right, in the gray map, how this all plays out in the actual Arabian Peninsula. And secondly, because this actually points out Hill. You can see where Hill is. And Hill, as it mentioned, is in between the Miqat and the Haram. Okay, it's in between the two. So again, you've got Dhul Hulayfa at the top, Medina, which is just outside of Dhul Hulayfa. You've got Ju'fa there. You've got Jeddah there, which is obviously in the Miqat. You've got, hold on, let me just, oh, have I just stopped this share? What have I done? I'll just switch something off. Right, let me start again. Stop sharing, and then let me share again. I think I might switch something off. Window, there we are. Share, there we go. Okay. And you got Taif, which is out of the Qarn al-Manazil, Zat Irq, and the Haram is there. Second point is Ihram. Number 2 is before initiating the Ihram for Hajj, it is preferable to do wudu. Obviously, ghusl is better. Why? Because you're not going to be going into, you're not going to get, well, you can do ghusl, but the chances of doing ghusl are going to be slim, especially during the days where you are traveling from one place to the other. And also there's that extra fear factor of losing beard hair or head hair as you sort of like scratch your skin, and that obviously would mean that sadaqah has to be given for that penalty. So ghusl is better, but obviously wudu is bare minimum because you're going to pray 2 rakats nafal. You wear a clean top and bottom. We're going to talk about the ihram. For a woman, there's no need to wear any different clothing. I know some women prefer to wear white because they want to kind of get in the zone of the ihram, but there's no requirement as such to do that. Put on perfume. Of course, a person can put on perfume because they're not in ihram yet. They can even apply it to their 2 pieces of cloth. And then pray 2 rakats of salah. Okay. Now they're going to make the niyyah. So up until that point, they are not in ihram. Now when they're making niyyah, they're going to go into ihram. So now if he's got a hat on his head, he will take the hat off his head. If he's got any stitched clothing, like a coat on top of his 2 pieces of cloth, he'll take the coat off. Okay, because as soon as he makes niyyah, he's in that niyyah. A person doing Hajj only, yani mufrid, ifrad, will say, Allahumma inni uridu al-hajja fayassirhu li. Oh Allah, I intend to perform Hajj, so make it easy for me. Then he will say the talbiyah. Okay, we know what the talbiyah is. We're going to see it soon. And he will make intention for Hajj along with the talbiyah. Now he is in the state of ihram. The talbiyah, as we know, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika lak labbaik, innal hamda wa ni'mata lak wal mulk la sharika lak. It cannot be shortened, so one can't just say labbaik khalas, right? But if increased, it is permissible. So some people like to add things to this. That's khair, it's okay, it's fine. Okay, but it makes sense to adopt the sunan methods. There is more of zaliyat in there. Thereafter, one will be in the state of ihram. So now all the regulations of ihram will apply to this person. So what do we mean by all the regulations of ihram? Well, in the state of ihram, he must refrain from any form of sexual acts with the husband, with the wife. Okay. anything. Obviously, the others are forbidden anyway, but these obviously, even the one which are legitimate, have to be banned. Any form of transgression, whatever it might be, okay, it's broad, any form of transgression, and arguments, okay. Now, we don't mean philosophical arguments, where you are putting a premise forward and you're having a debate. Argument here in this case is a disagreement type of arguments, or raised voices, or you want to make a point to somebody. This is not like you're having a philosophical argument, as we say. You refrain from killing any land-based game. Again, this is somewhat academic. The only game that you'll be killing is burgers and pizzas. So there's very little chance of killing anything other than that, because those type of creatures just don't live around. Even now in the kind of Muzdalifa parts and whatever, those animals have long gone. You may still come across things like, I don't know. Again, I doubt it, but smaller animals, but like birds, whatever. But these animals just don't hang around there. Indicating to it or directed towards it. Plus, likewise, we're not hunting game. We don't hunt animals to eat. This was a time when people would hunt animals to eat them. We don't hunt animals to eat them now. We as I said, the only thing we're hunting is pizzas and burgers. You refrain from putting on perfume. Okay, you are now in the state of ihram. Cutting nails. Okay, one will refrain from that. Covering the face or the head. Obviously, for the woman, she will continue to cover her head. The question, because that's her aura. A man will still have his aura covered, which is between his navel and his knee. He may, if it gets hot, remove his top garment, so his shoulder and his chest and back are clear. But you can never, under any circumstances, remove his lower garment, okay, because that's his aura. For the woman who wears a niqab, which is wajib according to the Ahnaf, then she will get that kind of cap which pushes the cover away from her face. Hence, refrain from washing the head or the beard with scent, cutting the beard, okay, shaving the head. So, one can't cut anything at all. One has to wait until they're out of the state of ihram. Wearing stitched clothing, because of the fact that, and this is clothing. Some people ask, oh, what if I've got a bag over my shoulder which is stitched? What if I've got a money belt that's stitched? This is referring to clothing. A money belt is not considered as clothing unless you think it is a belt. That's why many people say this as well whilst they're tying their ihram. Oh, I will tie my money belt for the purpose of holding my ihram up. Okay, now if that intention is like that, then it's problematic, because that money belt is now a belt, and if it's stitched, it's problematic. So don't have that intention. Okay, wear a money belt, but be strategic in where you place it. If you are thinking that my ihram might drop. Turban is not permitted, obviously, because it's covering the head. Hat, of course, isn't either. Refrain from wearing colored clothing, which is scented, because back in the day, things like saffron were used to color clothes, and obviously saffron has a strong smell. Nowadays, when clothes are colored, then it's dyed and hardened, and the dye no longer smells. So this is a basic, a traditional method gone from many centuries ago, where clothes were dyed. However, we obviously stipulate the Sunnah method, which is to wear white. In the state of ihram, one need not refrain from bathing, seeking shade in a house or an umbrella. I don't know why there's a H at the end of umbrella, or tying a belt in between. Okay. Increase the talbiyah when you pray your salah, when you go up a high rise. So anytime where there's a height, okay, you increase your talbiyah. You go down a valley, you meet other people, or when the night comes. So these are times where a person will increase their talbiyah. Again, you're not going to be moving around that much. But if you're going up an escalator, you're coming down an escalator, you're meeting fellow people in ihram. And here we have a nice diagram of how to tie a nizar. So if we start at the top, which is a bit naughty because the chap doesn't look like he's got anything on, we start in the top left-hand corner. So you can see the izar that you do is you hold the sheet out as far wide as your arms can hold. And if you find that your sheet is longer than your arms, then as long as your arms can hold it, You then fold one over, okay, across to the midriff, and then you bring the other over across to the midriff. But the key thing to bear in mind, which is cartoon number 2, is make sure that your legs are stretched as far as is your stride. Some people, unfortunately, keep their legs together like it is in cartoon number 1. They tie their ihram and now they can't move their legs. They're waddling, okay, and they fall over. They're restricting their movement. So stretch your legs as far as you want to stretch them, as far as you think is your normal, comfortable gait, and then tie that in. And tie it, if you notice in cartoon number 3 and number 4, this is right up to his chest bone, across where his sort of breastbone is. It's very high. And obviously his waist is all the way down there. So he's got a good half a foot or maybe even a foot, maybe more than a foot of space to play with. And you notice that the drop of the ihram is halfway up his shins, approximately. So if you look at cartoon number 5, so as he now starts to fold, okay, the ihram, so he does one fold all the way around, then he folds it again all the way around, then he folds it again all the way around, then he folds it again all the way around. Little small nice folds, no need to be big folds, little folds, okay? Why? Because the little folds will mean you can get more folds in, and also what it will mean is that it will get it tighter, okay? The little folds will grip it more. And once he's done that, we can see in cartoon number 6, that will be quite sturdy, quite tight. And if he sort of pulls on it, not too hard, obviously, if he pulls on it, it will be gripped well. Okay. And the only downside, obviously, is that if this chap has got a nice stomach. Now, if the stomach is nice and you find the stomach obviously sticks out and then it starts to come in. Okay. So he might tie his ihram on his stomach, which is obviously protruding. But as he's moving around, it starts to slide down his stomach. And obviously, as he's coming down, that's thinner. And this is where it can drop. So I guess for people who've got a little bit of a bit of a protruding belly, a pot belly, is to maybe tie it above the belly. Okay. Then in that way, the belly is acting as a bit of resistance. And that won't allow that to go. Because you want this to be tied just above your highest point. You see, the way the cartoon characters tied it, number 6, is he's tied it at his waist, and the hips stick out more than the waist if you're looking after yourself. If you're not looking after yourself, then, you're just kind of straight down, aren't you? But if you're looking after yourself, you'll find that, your body will taper in at the waist, and then slightly your hips will be slightly out. So when you tie it at your waist, at your sort of navel, your belly button, then it will hold because your hips are sticking out and there's got some resistance. So one of the reasons why this falls, unfortunately, is because of our body shape. So number 7, he's looking good. He's happy. He's still got his stretched legs, as you can see. And now he could be normal in number 8 because he doesn't need to stand like he's going into a splits all the time. Okay, but one thing he needs to bear in mind, is that obviously it's like he's wearing a dress. He's wearing there's nothing. Well, what I'm trying to get across is that there's nothing underneath. So he has to be careful how he sits now. Okay, so he can't sit, especially on the floor on his bottom and then draw his legs up. With his knees close to his chest, okay, because he's going to leave everything for all to see. He's got to be careful that he conceals himself, appropriately when he's sitting down. So either he sits with his legs to the side, or he sits with his legs together, or something of that nature. The next bit is to wear the rida, which is the upper garment. That's again pretty straightforward. So like he did with his izar, he holds it up, okay? Again, like he held the one beneath at the top, cartoon number 1. And all he does is puts it over his shoulders, throws one over one shoulder and the other one over the other shoulder, and that's it. It's over both shoulders, keeps him nice and warm, okay? It covers his back, it covers his shoulders, it's covering his arms, it's covering his torso. You have his hands sort of, coming out from the bottom. And that should be it, really. Okay. When he's doing ittiba, okay, ramal, you know, for the 3 circuits. Then he has to expose his right shoulder. Now, to expose his right shoulder, how does he do that? It's pretty easy, but let's just follow the cartoon again. So the shoulder, so he will now, instead of being like a straight, you know, 1/4 to 3, okay, he's going to be sort of like more 20 to 2, okay? So he's going to have his angle there. And this time what he will do is that it will go over his left shoulder, because that's his left shoulder. That will go over his left shoulder, and the other one will go under his armpit of his right shoulder. Okay, so because he's holding it like this one goes here, this one will come under here, and he throws it over there. Okay, so this is uncovered. Okay, this is only when he's doing the ittiba, and this is again a good reason to be in good shape, so that at least your body, your shoulder, your arms, yeah, they're quite strong, and you look the part. Okay, hopefully that's been self-explanatory. Oh, I've gone into great detail anyway. So tawaf. Okay, so when one enters Mecca, start from the masjid. I think what we might do is, let me see how many slides we've got left. It's hard for me to see. What we might do is okay, let's do tawaf, and then we're going to pause here, and we're going to see what questions have come, and then we're going to tackle those questions first, inshallah. And then if we've got time, we'll come back to it. If not, we will finish things off. So tawaf. Okay, so we're now physically in ihram. We're good to go. We've now come to the Masjid Haram. When one enters Mecca, you start from the masjid. Now, that's not a necessity. So if it so happens that you arrive very late and you're tired, okay, you're fatigued, you're thirsty, you're hungry, you've not slept, then it makes sense to sleep. It does make sense to sleep and rest. You know, if you're dehydrated, you're in a country which is hot, you're now going to perform 2 hours, possibly 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe, depends how busy it is, of activities, which means walking. Now, if you've never walked for 4 hours, right, then you're going to struggle. Why? Because you're doing this 4 hours after 24 hours travel, dehydrated, hungry, and not slept. So you can imagine the challenge. So you have to physically get yourself ready for Hajj. So you're fit and strong, because it is a challenge. Okay, it is quite demanding. So when you enter Makkah, you start from the masjid. As I said, you don't have to do this straight away. You get your strength and ready for it. So sometimes a good night's skip is good and starting the next morning. Upon seeing the house, you make takbir, tahleel, la ilaha illallah, and you make dua. Then if you're able to face the black stone, you say takbir, tahleel, you raise both hands as if you are in salah, and you touch it if it is possible without harming others, or else touch something which is in the hand and kiss that thing that you've touched in the hand. If you're unable to face the stone, say takbir, tahleel, and then send salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ. It is not absolutely essential, and you see people do this, is they stop at the line which is in level with the black stone and stand still. And as they stand still, then Aram say, you know, raise their hands, Allahu Akbar, and then sometimes they kiss their palms, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So they spent about, you know, a minute there. Now, if you've been, and we're going to show you some an image of circumambulation. If you've ever been performing tawaf, you've got like, you know, I don't know, a few 100,000 people circumambulating, all going at a nice steady pace. Now, if you get some people who are going to be stubborn enough to stand there for a minute, where are those people going that are coming up? Okay. And if they now decide to stand for a minute, you're going to get clogged. So quick. Yeah, it's not. This is not essential. It's only if the black stone can be touched that there is an element of slowing down, touching the black stone, kissing the black stone, whatever. Or if you're close enough to extend a staff to it, then fine. But that's for the very, very few. For the great majority of us, we're far, far away from it. Okay, far away. So Bismillah, and that's it. Allahu Akbar, and carry on. La ilaha illallah, carry on. Move along. Doing tawaf upon arrival, and this is sunnah for an afaqi. Remember, we mentioned afaqi is somebody who's come from outside of Mecca. He's not a resident, a foreigner. Okay. Tawaf is to head right with the door, being adjacent to your left, going towards and around the hatim. The hatim is the semicircle. Okay. You'll see there's a semicircle, a built-up wall. And the reason why that semicircle exists is in reality, the Kaaba is actually smaller than what it should be. There's probably about maybe 1.5 meters or so of the Kaaba, which has not been built and won't be built. That extended into partway into the Hatim. Okay, so some of the actual Kaaba does not have a house around it anymore. Hence the reason if somebody was to sneakily cut through, even though they won't allow you, the guards won't allow you, but if somebody was to sneakily cut through, okay, then they would not have performed tawaf, because they've kind of, it's like in a way they've gone through the house rather than around the house. Okay. And you will complete 7 circuits. You do ramal. Ramal is strutting, as it's referred to. In the first 3 circuits with ittiba. Ittiba, this is for men only, of course. They will remove the garment off their top shoulder, right shoulder, place it under the armpit so that shoulder is clear. Left is still covered. Each time you go past the black stone, do as mentioned previously. Similarly, to touch the Rukn Yamani without kissing it, each round is preferable. That's if you're close to the Kaaba. Again, this is very, very rare. Finish the tawaf with istilam. That's if you can touch the black stone and kiss. That is if that's possible. And finally, and we're going to stop it here, pray 2 rakat salah, which is wajib, after every tawaf behind Maqam Ibrahim. Maqam Ibrahim, you'll see, is a small glass enclosure. Okay, and you pray somewhere behind it. Again, don't be pedantic. Remember, this was a time when there were so few people that touching the black stone was possible. Praying behind Maqam Ibrahim was possible. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, especially on the day of Hajj, that will be doing this. So the chances of you getting in there is pretty small. Okay, highly improbable. And you're not there to inflict harm onto anybody. So anywhere around that area will suffice. Anywhere around that rough vicinity will suffice. Okay, let's not get pedantic. Thereafter, pray 2 rakat salah on wajib. And I think what we'll do is we'll stop there. We're going to start with that next week so that we can refresh our memory. I'm now going to stop. Okay, we're going to go back here and we're going to just tackle some questions before we wrap up. So one of the questions we had is, Assalamu alaikum, do meat fibers between the teeth prevent the validity of ghusl? Yes, one would say so if water is not reaching the teeth, but that's again to the best of one's ability, because many of us have plaque on our teeth. Before starting salah, is it enough to be reasonably sure of being within the valid Qibla direction, within 45 degrees of that exact direction, or almost try to be certain if they can? If possible, certain. If not, that approximate will be sufficient. I think I've answered these questions, should we use chat GPT to find sources of hadith and whether they're sahih or munkar? No, I would not suggest you use chat GPT for that. Salam. A person who communicates through sign language has given 2 divorces before to his wife. Now he has issued her with another divorce through sign language. The wife is convinced that the sign he gave is of divorce and not a threat. He maintains he did not have an intention of divorce. Please advise me on what to do. Well, I guess you'd have to look at what sign he used. If he used the same sign that he's used previously, where he had issued divorce, then it's going to be very difficult for us to determine the difference. So we're going to have to go by that sign that he used. He mentioned that this is just by a sign. Talaq does not take place without an intention. Assalamu alaikum. When booking a hotel room, you have to pay an additional charge of £15 to be able to cancel or make changes to the booking. This is an optional additional payment that you make to have the ability to change the booking due to unforeseen circumstances. Would this be permissible? Well, I don't understand why there would be this additional charge. If it's just a charge that gives you extra ability to do something, there's not a problem. I'm only going by what's been shared there. Assalamu alaikum, Sam. I hope you are and family are well. Barakallahu fiqh. Yes, all is good. A person owns a mortgage-free house, alhamdulillah, and therefore won't be involved in interest. However, they are reading up on house insurance or alternatives like takaful. What is your advice on this? From a standing point, one doesn't have to have insurance. We believe in Allah and that He will safeguard and He will protect. But if a person decided to take insurance and take an insurance in which it would be a Shari'i valid one, then it is sound. There's nothing wrong. Rulings advice on having a savings account. Well, obviously, if there's interest associated with it, then one should avoid that savings account. Salam, I know it is compulsory for the toes to touch the ground during the duration of sajda. However, after completing the three tasbihs and going into the tashahhud position, my feet lift slightly off the ground just before rising. Is that okay? Is it difficult to keep both in ground while rising? That's fine. That's fine. Also, I asked previously about nest pensions. I didn't completely understand. My apologies. So my question regarding that is, the money I have in my nest pension pot, do I add the total amount to my other money to calculate my zakat, or find out 25% on what's in my nest pension pot? You take 25% and add that to the other money. Okay, hope this makes sense. It does. If that's what I said, 25%, then that's what you add, yes. And if one is praying salah and forgets whether he's in the third or fourth rakat, if he's only slightly leaning towards one option but not strongly, does he go with that? He does, yes. Or does he treat it as pure doubt? Well, no, because he's already got an inclination towards something. And that covers that. Let's see if there's any on the ladies group. Salam, I have a question regarding Haith. I've tried emailing the address provided previously, but it doesn't work. It does work, sister. It's on the pinned message. Go to the pinned message and there's an email there. Use that email. MIWQ, Markaz al-Ifta wal Qāḍī, menstrual questions @gmail.com. Please use that. MIWQ, menstrual questions @gmail.com. And I think that covers all the ladies' questions as well. Jazakumullah khairan. So, inshallah, we're going to close there. Join me next week when we go into the second part. Okay. Let me just make note of where we have stopped, in which we go into the second part of Hajj, the 5 days of Hajj in particular, with our detailed approach. And then that will be week 4, 28th of May. Which will mean we will finish Hajj next week. And then inshallah on week 5, which is on the 4th of June, in which Dhul Hijjah would have started, inshallah, we're going to then cover the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the importance and what we should be doing. I'll give about 30 seconds. If somebody has questions on here, they may ask them, and then we will, inshallah, close. Okay, seems that has all been settled. Alhamdulillah, jazakumullah khairan for your attendance. Please do share these videos with anybody you know who's going for Hajj. It will benefit them, inshallah. And I will see you same time next week, 6 p.m. For our week 4 on the second part of these detailed assessment practices of Hajj. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.